Well, thank you for hanging out into the late afternoon for this session. I really appreciate it. We're going to be discussing the impact of the federal policy changes that are happening and some of the proposed funding cuts and their impact on, in particular, marginalized communities in Southern Oregon. And what we're proposing to do this afternoon is sort of navigate all of the emerging changes in the federal affordable housing policy and the budget cuts and what impact they're going to have on low-income communities of color, immigrants, seniors, other marginalized communities. And what we're going to do is, and first of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Rose Ojeda, and I'm a recovering affordable housing developer and now a consultant. And I'm back in the middle of things, helping out Housing Oregon with this conference and moderating this wonderful panel. So what I'm going to do is introduce the panel members so you know who they are, and then I'm going to let each one of them talk a little bit more about their organization, and then we're going to go to a moderated question and answer with just the panel members, and then once we're done with that Q&A with the panel members, we're going to shift to asking the audience for their questions. This is a big topic. It's very complex. It's very political. It's fraught with all kinds of landmines. And what we hope people will do is just listen and listen to the concerns that we're raising in this discussion about the federal policy impact. So with that, I'm going to introduce the panel members. And then if you could just wave. Okay, so first we have Leor Beverly, and she is a permanent supportive housing program manager with the Urban League of Portland. Oops. Okay, and next we have Kim McCarty, excuse me. She's the executive director for the Community Alliance of Tenants. And then we also have Jennifer de la Mancha, and who is also with the Community Alliance of Tenants. We have two missing panel members. Jamie Gatewood was going to come and speak, but she's not able to do that due to a sick child. But we do have the Community Alliance of Tenants who will be able to speak expertly about fair housing concerns. And then we also had Kathy Casey with the Unite, based out of Medford, and she is not able to be here. We were hoping that she works with immigrant farm workers, and but I'm a board member also for Coalición Fortaleza based out of Medford, and I'll be able to speak to some of the immigrant rights issues that are surfacing as a result of all of the federal deportation action that's taking place. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and why don't we get started with Leor? Why don't you tell us about the Urban League of Portland?
Hello, y'all. My name is Leor Beverly. I'm the Senior Program Manager of Permanent Supportive Housing with the Urban League of Portland. The Urban League offers a wide variety of many very intentional services for our community. We offer workforce, connection to jobs. We offer empowerment programs, which are connection to financial resources and other things to help families. We have housing, which is rapid rehousing, emergency services, and then permanent supportive housing. We also offer health and senior services, so connection to health opportunities, connection to things for our seniors to make sure that they are very well taken care of in our community. We also do advocacy work, things like this. We've seen you in many of our spaces. I can speak very directly about permanent supportive housing, as that's my strong point. We take our chronically homeless and disabled community members, and we gather them in. We provide assessments and then provide very intentional services such as food resources, housing, clothing, mental health support, and other things. We're very proud of the work that we do. We affect many in the community, and it is culturally specific, but also we help anybody who comes through our doors. Thank you.
Thank you, Leor. All right, and so next we are going to hear from Kim McCarty with the Community Alliance of Tenants.
Good afternoon. I'm Kim McCarty with the Community Alliance of Tenants. The Community Alliance of Tenants is focused on education, advocacy, and organizing. And those three priorities together, we believe, creates community power because that is what we believe is needed for people to make changes in their lives. So for tenant education, the basis of that program is our tenant renters' rights hotline. So we answer the call from folks from all over the state, and they are calling us to our renters' rights hotline to find out what are my rights if I get an eviction notice. What do I do if I need to talk to my landlord about a repair? How do I address my neighbor who's harassing me, or the maintenance technician who's harassing me? So our staff are expert on a very wide range of topics related to landlord-tenant law, and they counsel people through that process. We also offer advocacy services, and what I mean by that is there are individuals who we want to give more attention to, and holding their hand through the process, because we know that many individuals are very frightened by the process, by the power imbalance that they have with their landlord, and so that might take shape in helping them navigate rent assistance, helping them get access to an attorney, and we do provide individuals access to free legal advice. And it might mean going to housing court with them, or navigating, finding out where they could get help for rent assistance or other types of safety net needs. And that program, called our Tenant Protections Team, also goes out into the community and does workshops. And we really just try to share baseline information, because at the end of the day, no one's going to come really to anyone's rescue. The only recourse in terms of landlord-tenant law is to go to court. People can't afford that. And so they're really, most of us who are tenants are navigating this process by ourselves, and Community Alliance of Tenants strives to help them in that process. For some of those advocacy services that I spoke to, those are done in conjunction with our partners. So as an example, in the metro area, we're in partnership with IRCO, with SEI, with Apano, and that way we can serve a group of people, a culturally specific group of people who are connected to their community, and really deepen that service relationship. In terms of organizing, many buildings, are not going to be able to. People can't do it on their own, right? Sometimes the things that are happening in a community are bigger than what's happening to you as an individual. Like the roof needs to get fixed, the parking lot is in disrepair, all of the children are facing discrimination, they can't ride their bikes. So we help give folks the tools to have leadership and organize their community. And so those are the main elements that we feel relates to tenant power. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Jennifer, do you want to add anything else to that overview?
That's my boss, so I'm glad she went first. So I'm a tenant education and support specialist. So I'm actually based here in Grants Pass. So if any of you guys want a workshop, whether it's with your coworkers or you have tenants, I can definitely do that. Yeah, kind of everything that Kim said. Another unique thing on our hotline, we do have other languages. When people could call in, and we can definitely help them in those languages. In particular, I work on the Spanish hotline, and so we grew our staff. So I'm really proud to say that the turnaround time in calls is very quick. So encourage tenants that to please call our hotline so they can receive the help or just all the information that they need in the time that they need it, and they'll be able to receive it in that timely manner. I think that's it. I think think you covered it, Kim.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer. And in addition to being a consultant, I'm also a board member with Coalición Fortaleza. That is a Latina-led nonprofit based out of Medford. And Coalición Fortaleza emerged out of the 2020 Almeida wildfire. You heard earlier today from Erika Ledesma, the executive director, about the organization. And I'll just add that, our work has been extremely vital in terms of empowering the Latino community, especially the immigrant Latino community. And through all of the work of Coalición Fortaleza, I think, one of the big outcomes, in addition to the community engagement outreach, which I really wholeheartedly support developers get involved in, is that it really helps to empower the community, and they help to, become advocates not only for themselves, but also on behalf of others, and especially for us who are affordable housing developers, we need to empower residents around their housing. So I really want to encourage all of the developers to really get more and more involved with community engagement and reach out to organizations like Coalición Fortaleza who can assist with that effort. Okay, so with that, what I wanted to do also was give folks some context as well as to why we need to have this discussion about the federal impact. And I think it will be good for me to review with you all. Hang on just a moment, I'm getting that information. Hang on. Kind of a summary that was provided by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. They have been tracking all of the administration's housing policies and other executive orders and other proposed action, and what its real impact will be, especially for low-income people of color, the LGBTQ community, and other marginalized groups. So here's what they are arguing will be the impact as a result of these policies. They will undermine efforts to repair racial and social inequities in housing and homelessness. They are directing federal agencies to terminate all diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility practices and policies and rescind previous executive actions demanding DEI efforts to underserved communities. They will weaken HUD's ability to administer and oversee congressionally approved federal housing investments. HUD staff are deeply committed to the agency's mission, and I will add, most federal bureaucrats are, and have deep subject matter expertise, but they are also under-resourced, understaffed, and overworked. This will put marginalized people at greater risk of harassment, discrimination, housing instability, and homelessness. And they are denying fair housing and civil rights protections for the LGBTQ individuals, and they are directing HUD to rescind protections for transgender people experiencing homelessness and seeking shelter. They are undermining state and local efforts to address housing and homelessness. In an executive order, President Trump declared federal agencies to prevent sanctuary jurisdictions, Oregon is a sanctuary state, or jurisdictions that limit or deny cooperation with federal immigration enforcement from receiving critical federal investments. It will harm people at their moment of greatest need. The Trump administration has rescinded guidelines that prohibit immigrant enforcement from arresting undocumented people in sensitive areas. They will allow immigration law enforcement to target disaster relief centers, domestic violence centers, homeless shelters. This is cruelly denying immigrants and families their due process. And so with that, these are all proposed or have been implemented already. I'm going to go ahead and start asking some questions with all of that context in mind. All right, so first, I'm going to ask the first question. What are the early effects within our communities of color, the LGBTQ, seniors, and other low-income clients? And I wanted to just sort of check in with each panel member, and maybe if you could report to us what you're already starting to see and hear. So why don't we start with you, Kim?
Okay, thank you. In one word, the impact is fear. And the way that shows up is folks not coming to get the information that they need, not showing up or asking for the help that they need. In the LGBT community, it might mean people being more closeted, and generally just being less willing to share, and so that they can get their needs met.
Leor, why don't you speak next?
Yes, I would agree. I think the same one word would be fear. One thing that I've noticed is people also losing hope. So realizing that there's a chance that their needs definitely won't get met, and so they make the decision to not even strive to seek the help or provide the information out of fear of even more retaliation.
Jennifer?
Yes, so I have to obviously echo fear. I know, like on the hotline, I can share that I've had many tenants call in and we walk through their situation, asking if they made a request for repair and how long did that take. And sometimes, it'll take 6 months, it'll take a year, and these are people living with mold in their house. So once we walk through all the things that are necessary for them to receive, to get that repair fixed and what we need to do that. At the very end of the call, I find that a lot of people just say, never mind, I don't want to cause waves, and for me, that's hard to hear because that they need to live in a safe home. That's their right, and, they should be able to be willing to just live comfortable and live safely. And sometimes people are just in fear that if they say something or if they do anything, they don't want to cause waves, they don't want to have that eviction. So that's definitely something that we're seeing on the hotline most recently.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to go on to question 2, and this will affect mostly fair housing. How will the proposed funding cutbacks impact fair housing and discrimination enforcement, and what other impacts do you foresee? So Kim and Jennifer, if you could take that question.
Yeah, I'll start. So one of the most immediate impacts for this region, Fair Housing Council of Oregon is the fair housing organization for the state of Oregon. No one else is doing this work. They just lost a federal grant, and they lost it simply because this particular administration feels that fair housing is not important. That means that there are hundreds of thousands of dollars that could have come to Oregon for enforcement that are not. It means that in Southern Oregon specifically, Fair Housing Council of Oregon doesn't have the resource to have an enforcement arm. And then just more generally, if we don't have those resources, that means that individuals who are experiencing a civil rights violation related to housing have very limited places that they can go. They can go to BOLI, and our representatives from BOLI are here today. We're so grateful that Oregon is receptive to taking on that work, but it's probably limited. They probably have limited resources as well. And then the other alternative is to call the 1-800-HUD number, and we're already hearing that the staffing at HUD is also being reduced. So our concern is that people might be making the complaint, the phone number might be there, but what is the follow-up?
Jennifer, do you want to add to that?
I guess I would just say that obviously with all the funding cuts and everything, it just going across the board, it just reduces people's right to that education piece. And so if we're not out there giving that to them, or we're not funded to do so, it's just going to cause so much chaos, across the board. And yeah, kind of what Kim said, with fair housing, that's where we're trying to work in partnership with them, so we can see kind of where we can pick up the pieces, at least in the meantime, with Jamie, and she's great too. She has her card up in the front.
Okay. Leor, do you want to talk a little bit about just, are there concerns around the Black community around these kinds of fair housing issues? Sorry, I should be speaking in the mic.
Yeah, so we know that discrimination runs rampant already. People will begin to feel more comfortable being discriminatory. We got word that the administration is exploring eliminating some of our main tools for enforcement, like legal aid, which are critical partners to holding folks accountable. And I think what I hear and what I feel is, who's going to fight for us? If our voices are muted and laws are erased, we'll be gaslit into silence. And that's what we're saying, that the issue isn't an issue. No right, no reason, or no proof to protect yourself without legal protections. Segregation is slowly being reintroduced into our country. It's like a revival of racism. Thank you.
And I can speak to as a broker. I'm still an active broker, but haven't done a lot lately. But in my past life as a broker, where I had lots of clients, and I worked not exclusively, but with a lot of communities of color, it was not unusual to hear, racist comments from sellers, from neighbors, from other brokers. And as a result, the Oregon Real Estate Agency has been mandating additional requirements for brokers that they receive fair housing training, because it has continued to be an ongoing problem. It has lessened a bit, but it is still alive and well. And of course, with the lessening of fair housing enforcement and less legal services availability, it's going to be a nightmare all over again. And just trying to sell a home to a person of color who wants to live in a particular neighborhood is going to be so much more difficult. So those are real fears. I mean, this kind of discrimination still goes on, and it's just a real concern that a lot of us in the real estate community have around, the lack of enforcement. All right, I'm going to now move on to an issue that is stoking enormous fears, and that is the Trump administration's deporting of undocumented individuals and families without due process. I am not an expert on immigration law. I just sort of know what I'm seeing. We do work with a lot of immigrant communities. I'm sure all of us have worked with immigrant communities from different countries around the world. I worked with a nonprofit called Hacienda CDC that worked with a lot of immigrant families and providing them affordable housing. And those communities, even though it's Hacienda CDC, housed individuals from all over the world. So not just Latin America and Central and Mexico. I really had a really good, grounding in working with immigrant communities and understanding their trauma of, being refugees or, arriving here, some legally, some illegally, but they're here to improve their lives economically, they're here to land in a safe place. And let's keep in mind too that, America or the US is an immigrant nation. We have accepted people from all over the world in the past. And my strong feeling is that the policies that are being enacted it's just racism. I mean, there are certain populations that this administration has decided they do not want in the United States. And so, I need to deal with that. And I'm sure all of us will need to deal with that. And we need to figure out, how to respond to that. So with that, I'm going to just ask, and unfortunately Kathy from Unite is not here, so I'm just sort of speaking on behalf of, based on what I know, and also my experience working with a culturally specific nonprofit Hacienda CDC and as a board member for Coalición Fortaleza. But the fear is real. There are a lot of immigrant members who are deciding to pretty much stay in and not participate in activities that are, in some cases, essential like going to their, medical provider. And, showing up for group events. There's just a lot of concern. I mean, there is fear from children who don't want to go to school because they're worried that, their parents might be taken away while they're at school. So, the fears are very real, and they're based in fact. I mean, these things are actually happening here in the United States. So there is just enormous fear, as Kim was saying. And I'll just, if you guys want to add to that and maybe what you guys are seeing as well.
You want to say? No, go ahead.
Well, first, we're seeing when we're asking folks to show up that they're not, because they fear that if from the immigrant and refugee community specifically, if they're all in the same place, that there's a target. So we're in response to that, more of our communication is online. We're not taking pictures so that people can be identified later. So those are some of the measures that we're taking. I wanted to let you all know that we were advocates for Senate Bill 599, and this was a copied policy that was in the city of Portland for many years, which said that as a housing provider, it's not necessary to ask for somebody's social security card. There are many other ways to identify a person, and because at the end of the day, it's a contract. You want to know who this person is, so that you can evaluate whether or not they're going to live in your home. But it's not the role of the housing provider to be the police of immigration. That's not your role. Your role is just to make sure that that person can be a part of the community, and you can do that any number of ways. And so this particular legislation said it can be an ITIN number, it can be other forms of government ID. So that was just went into law. As of June, well, it will be as of June 27th, it will be the law. And so that's just one of the things that I think as housing providers and advocates, we need to utilize the tools that are there and make our communities safer and let them know that they have these rights.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to say anything? Okay. All right. Let's move on to DEI practices and policies, which again, this administration wants to eliminate. And they want to, basically force states to remove all their DEI policies in order to receive federal funding. And this federal funding is critical for a variety of services. I know that in working with Oregon Housing and Community Services, they have been asking us to implement diversity, and for those who don't know, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices that certainly encourage communities of color to participate, to advocate for themselves. We also want to affirmatively market to individuals who are least likely to apply for affordable housing. And we also want to ensure that public dollars are going to a diverse group of minority and women and disadvantaged and disabled contractors. The goal is to lift all boats, and that is what diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices are asking us to do. So to force us to eliminate them, again, is going back to exclusivity, eliminating people's voice, destroying potentially small businesses that are owned by women and minority business enterprises, and so forth. So it's, again, extremely concerning that, we are, going back to a time when, we were not being encouraged to raise our voice and share our opinions and, be included. So it's just, again, it feels very backward. Kim, do you want to add to this issue of DEI?
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit from the perspective, organizational perspective. So recently, our organization applied for a grant, and it was really interesting when we were going through the interview with the grantor, which was a government, and much of the questioning was about DEI. Why is there an emphasis on DEI? Why do you want to support immigrant and refugee communities and people of color? And why are you referring to race? Because perhaps by just referring to race, then you are being discriminatory yourself. And so it was interesting that the real failure to recognize that diversity, equity, inclusion means all of us. It's not to be exclusive. It's a methodology to be helpful to everyone, and and within that is a recognition that there are disparities. There are historic disparities. There are current disparities that populations are experiencing right now, and many of those disparities are related to race, or they might be related to age or gender. And it's important for us to understand why those disparities are happening, because we can't really serve a community if we don't understand that and understand that people are being treated differently. And so we need to recognize that, and by recognizing that, that doesn't mean that we're treating people differently or excluding someone else because of that. So those are the kind of conversations that I've observed are happening right now, that our leaders that have the purse are now taking on this larger philosophy in some instances of not supporting DEI, and I think that's really dangerous and unfortunate.
Go ahead, Leor.
As we know, racism is targeted. Therefore, undoing racism needs to be also. The state has a responsibility to ensure that programs designed to tackle racism and prejudice remain a top priority for state resources. That goes for bonds, general funds, revenues, any and everything. They have to step up. If the feds won't target undoing racism, that doesn't mean that Oregon can't target undoing racism. It means we should step up even more. Just a quick blurb. Fully fund POPs 502, 504, and 505, currently in TED, committee with the state legislative session 2025. Thank you.
I think, well, they both said it all. I just wanted to echo both of them. And, you know, I also was on the board, an advisory board, and it was interesting to see that just like in our little community when we had people apply for grants, and that's exactly what we were looking for. We were looking for the diversity, how we're going to service, you know, not only the community as a whole, but like Kim said, like just really the populations that really do need that uplifting. So I think if they could just really see that as a whole, you know, it would just make things that much greater, right? And so, yes, we're focusing as Oregon, as an entire community, but we're really helping those who really do need that help, so.
Go ahead, Leno.
I also wanted to say that, you know, everything that we do has to remain intentional. Every service that we provide, every plate that we give, every conversation we have, we need to connect people to the resources that they need, and we need to seek them unapologetically. Hiring people that represent the community of people we're trying to serve, it means commitment to DEI practices within organizations must strengthen. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So this feels really gloomy. But with every backlash, there will always be resistance. And I think we're at a moment where we really do need to focus on our resistance to this, what I believe is a backlash against equality in our nation. And it's not full equality, it's a strides toward equality, and we're still facing a backlash. So what I thought we'd do is maybe just leave you with a plan of action, and you know, based on what you're hearing here, kind of to have a conversation about, what you can do to take action and to really fight back against some of these draconian measures. So I think I'm going to just ask each group to talk about what they're doing, either personally or on behalf of the organization. I think personally we probably need to be a little careful about that because some of us are still representing organizations. I am not, so I'm speaking just on behalf of my company and personally. But for me personally, I am getting involved with groups, as I strongly believe in power in numbers, that are taking a very strategic approach to fighting back against these measures. Organizations like the American Civil Liberties Union, Indivisible, there are local chapters in Oregon that are formed, and so many other groups that are organizing and pulling together strategies for response. And a lot of them do involve contacting your members of Congress, even those that you may be in opposition to, and share with them your concerns and your stories, and certainly urge them to, when they can participate, not pass legislation that is going to be detrimental to the people that we serve. So that's, personally what I am doing, but there are other groups that are forming. There are local resources. There are strategies that are in place. And I know one of the things that the Coalición Fortaleza is doing is that they are part of a network of people who are involved in kind of a rapid response to help and educate the immigrant community know about their rights. And again, just take protective measures for their families and their individuals, and know what their rights are. And folks are entitled to due process, but those are being ignored. And so there may be other strategies that they just need to be aware of. But again, we're educating based on what is legal. And based on the rights that are the U.S. guarantees every individual who is a resident of the United States, whether they're here legally or illegally. So that's what Coalición Fortaleza is doing, and there are other groups as well here in Southern Oregon that are involved in disseminating this information. Let me start with Jennifer. Do you want to talk about resources?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, and we're doing it here, right, is just having the conversation, connecting with one another. And I know for me, I know Kim will speak on Kat, but at least for me, whenever I receive any information, whether that be through email, through calls, I'm sure to get that information out to the community, that I know that's going to serve. I've also partnered with Coalición Fortaleza on a couple of things, and I think how you said, just continuing to working together because we're all here for one cause, and that's so important, is just the communication and connection, I feel like. And I know it's kind of a broad answer, but I think there's just so much work and there's just so many things going on. For me, that's at least the key things.
Leor, do you want to speak to this?
Absolutely. So I think educating yourself and your teams, making the education a requirement with ongoing refreshers. I think that now isn't the time to shrink back because of fear of how you'll be perceived in supporting DEI practices. Even to positions of power and authority, speak truth to power. History will eventually remember. I think attending community events and tabling and presenting, because I think that if we lose the art of community and being together, it's easier for us to be divided by these divisive tactics. Uplift your culturally specific providers in your communities. Help them find ways to add capacity as need grows. And also There are many nonprofit organizations across Oregon, and we're not here to outdo one another. I believe that we are here to not step on each other's toes, but to support. I think that there's room at the table for all of us to eat, and I also think that it should be one voice and one sound. We have to be willing to join forces at this point, and we have to be willing to be powerful together. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So first, I just want to, one of the things that CAT is doing is reminding everyone that fair housing law is the established law in the United States. It's dating back to the 60s. And we can use that as a starting point to recognize that DEI programs are legal. And in fact, they are an affirmation of fair housing law and the federal precedents for civil rights. That said, one of the things that CAT is doing is supporting small organizations, especially immigrant and refugee organizations and individuals, to talk specifically about rights that are going to be most relevant for immigrants and refugees. And so we've been doing that really intensively the last few months, and we'll probably continue to do so this summer. And yeah, so I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, Leor, you mentioned something that's really important about culturally specific organizations. A lot of them don't go after federal funding, and they're going to be reliant mostly on private foundations and maybe some programs that provide some sustainable income. But certainly, if there are any private foundations out there supporting culturally specific organizations, I think is going to get even more important in the years to come, because they're going to be in the front line dealing with so much of everything that's happening, and people people will lose their housing, people will be disappeared, families will be separated, and we're going to have to figure out a strategy for supporting these individuals. And these culturally specific organizations, many of them, along with other social service organizations, are going to be at the front line. So do what you can to support these organizations. So another big question that has come up has to do with what happens if ICE shows up at my affordable housing complex. And so we wanted to just sort of talk about, some ideas on, and again, rights that people have around allowing ICE on your private property. So, Kim, do you want to take that, or Jennifer?
I'm
or
not super knowledgeable about that.
I don't know if you are. Okay. All right. Well, here's one approach. Your property management companies should be getting familiar with what they are allowed and not allowed to do. There is, I think, some general guidance, I believe, that ACLU is making available, Immigration Law Center, and I don't know, and maybe when we can have more of a discussion on this, there are other folks here who can maybe give us some resources on that. But there are actually some language and strategies that you can use in the event that ICE shows up on your property to locate someone. So anyway, just want to pass that information along since that is a concern. And okay, anything else? Okay, so we're at the point now where we can take some questions from the audience, and you can direct them generally to the panel or to an individual. So go ahead, and we can bring a mic down to folks, and people can ask questions, or if you want to comment or share some resource, that would be wonderful. So just raise your hand if you have a question or comment or resource. And then tell us who you are, too. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ruth Daly, and I've lived here in Josephine County, Grants Pass, for almost 50 years. I'm a nurse, and I work with the Mobile Integrative Navigation Team, and I'm on the board of Mid-Rogue Foundation. I just want to thank all of you for your work. have a special place in my heart for fair housing. My parents, who would be 100,